Well, international trade consists of two key components, namely exports, sending goods outside, and imports, bringing goods in. Investments, on the other hand, have to do with capital flows, but they also have inflow of capital and outflow of capital. So that's the key structure of the international business field. Because supposedly, if they do trade, they're better off afterwards than they were before, because they can sell goods which they have in ample supply and which they can price well. And in exchange, they can get goods which they don't have in ample supply, which they may be even having a shortage of, and therefore fill that void in their state, in their country. Absolutely, yes. And the economic system of autarky is essentially the idea that you do everything yourself, and this means you're not depending on anyone. That's a very nice concept, but it's very inefficient. Because let's say if you do autarky in desert areas, then you have a hard time growing agricultural goods. Similarly, if you do autarky in mountainous areas, you have problems overcoming climatic considerations. However, if you have the mountains, you can trade services, for example, skiing, by bringing tourists in. And with the money you make through the skiing tourists, you can then buy your agricultural goods, and everybody's better off. Actually, countries don't trade at all. It's companies who do the trading. It's individuals who do the trading. And countries sometimes misunderstand that. Just when sometimes governments think that tax money is their money rather than the citizens' money, which is a grave misunderstanding. Sometimes also governments, when they get into trade policy, they think they're doing the trading, but they're not. And for example, if a government says we're now selling more to country X, it often forgets that country X consists of customers, of consumers. They're the ones who buy goods. And if they don't like the goods they're being offered from that specific nation, they may not buy them. And then there is no trade, no matter how much governments say, we think we should encourage that trade. Well, trading typically comprises exports and imports. That means you stay in your home country or you stay in your current location and you send goods out and you bring goods in to that location or from that location. With investment, the implication is you go to another location, you settle down, you open a plant, you hire people, and you produce goods there. Strategic trade is used by countries where they wish to affect either military positions or their own economic power. To give an example, China recently has announced that it will curtail the exports of rare earths. These rare earths are crucial in manufacturing weapons. And without those, the US and European weapons manufacturers will be much less efficient and much less capable of delivering certain qualities. Firms can import and export indirectly and directly. The indirect component is often the case when a firm doesn't even realize it's participating in international business by, for example, selling goods to a local company as a supplier, and the local company then integrates this supply into a product. Let's say Boeing Airplanes purchases certain seats from someone, and the seats go into the plane, and then the plane gets sold to Japan or to Germany. So the firm is an indirect exporter, but it doesn't really know that it is exporting at all. As a direct exporter or importer, the firm participates in the transaction and becomes part of the transaction and starts to think about things like, is my customer happy, or what do I need to do to make my product fit? So something which the purchaser did before, as long as we were just simply a supplier, now we have to do that ourselves. Well, a tariff in essence is a tax on international business. So you have mostly import tariffs. When you bring something into a country, that country charges something for that permission. And that is typically an ad valorem or measured by value tariff, which means 10%, for example. So if your item you bring in is worth 10 euro, you have to pay 1 euro in terms of tariff. But it can also be an export tariff where the government imposes a tax on the permission to export, and that can either be ad valorem or it can be, let's say, per piece. You export carpets, and the government says for every carpet you export, you have to pay a $50 tariff. And that then goes into the government coffers for usually some very specific projects. Firms who are exposed to tariffs are typically trading firms, because that's where they cross the border with activities, and that's where the governments impose the tariffs on them. If companies feel these tariffs are prohibitive or inhibit business to such a large degree that it really harms them, then they may choose to invest in order to circumvent those tariffs, since they are local producers.